Right, most of you are probably playing Space Marine 2, and if you're not, you've probably been watching stuff about Space Marine 2, and if neither of those things have appealed to you, then you're probably not going to care about this video, but this is just a few minutes of kind of disorganised rambling about, let's face it, one of the most looked forward to sequels of all time when it comes to Warhammer video games, because Space Marine 1 was really, really good. It was thoroughly enjoyable. I think it's actually aged pretty well as well. And we had to wait quite a long time to get a sequel, something that I think at the time we all kind of wanted. Now it's finally here, and having gone through the campaign and done a bit of the old Operation stuff and dipped into PvP, I don't know, there's thoughts, there's feelings. I think, to be fair, if you enjoyed Space Marine, you will enjoy Space Marine 2. I guess this is technically kind of a review, sort of. I'm not really sure what this is. We'll find out by the end of the video together. But overall, I think it's actually quite good. I don't think it's like a 10 out of 10 game, but I think it is quite good. Any sort of footage that you see in the background that I cut into and out of will be from like the first 40 minutes or so. Nothing really particularly spoilery in there, just a lot of killing Tyranids, which is, let's face it, about half of what the game actually is, because then you get to fight other stuff. There's going to be a little bit of spoilery stuff kind of coming up, but it's hard not to do that when you also want to talk about the story side of things for this game, because I think the plus points, the pro side of Space Marine 2 when it comes to, do you want to play it, should you play it, is it worth picking up, is it not worth picking up, it's extremely fun. It is, I think, just as fun as Space Marine 1. It's a little bit more complex than Space Marine 1. Some of that complexity works, some of it can feel quite clunky, but overall, you can lose entire hours to just, I mean, frankly, murdering everything in sight. And let's face it, when it comes to Space Marine and sort of playing a Space Marine in a video game, you're mostly there to shoot things with bolters, or plasma, or melter, or you're there to hack things to pieces, or squish them with a thunder hammer. That's pretty much what you expect out of the game, and it does deliver that in an extremely satisfying way 9 times out of 10. I think when it comes to the combat, they've absolutely nailed it, with a little bit of clunkiness when it comes to dodging and parrying, which I'm still not really sure whether I'm just bad or whether the system is a little bit inconsistent. It could well be both, but having spoken to other people, I'm kind of angling towards, it feels like maybe there are a bit too many ideas and not enough either got finished or were properly focused on. I'm not really sure, but there are definitely aspects to it that can cause occasional frustration, but not enough to like wipe out the fun from all the bits that really work. The sound design's fantastic, the guns sound brilliant, the actual impacts when you're hitting stuff are great, the executions are just as fun as they were in the first one. There could be more executions. I feel like there are too few animations for it. It kind of gets a little bit samey after a while, but then again, it kind of relies on you doing those executions to keep you in the fight, much in the same way that you had to keep executing things in the first game to stay in the fight. And the first game also had a fairly limited pool as well, so it's not like it's inconsistently low on animations for ripping things' heads off, or ripping limbs off things and stabbing them with those limbs, or even ripping the limbs off and then ripping the heads off. Tychus really likes ripping the heads off stuff, you'll find out pretty quickly. It's not a bad thing, it just gets a bit noticeable after a little while. The scale of it is ridiculous. The scale of it is way better than the first one. Space Marine was a good game. Space Marine nailed the feeling of being a Space Marine, but I would suggest it didn't necessarily nail the scale of 40k and the kind of, like, the absurdities of, like, a huge gothic landscape full of buildings that are just bigger than they need to be across the board. Whereas Space Marine 2, when it comes to looking out over, a bajillion cathedral rooftops, because that's just how the planet looks, they really did it. They really did it. There are so many moments in Space Marine 2 where you just find yourself looking out over an incredible landscape, or looking up into an incredible skyscape, or looking out as the two sort of merge together. And they did a great job with it. They've nailed the scale of it. They've absolutely got that right. Plus, along with that, there's lots of little things in there that really kind of highlight the fact that they know what they were doing with 40k. Like Saber Interactive, they properly like 40k. They didn't take the easy route with a few of the different references that are in there. You see things that are comparatively like deep cuts, things that like perhaps the most casual of 40k fans might not really have any idea about. Certain units, for instance, that you only see from Forge World. Be very easy to just pick stuff from the general Games Workshop catalogue, stuff that is very familiar to everybody, but they didn't do that. Instead, there's little references to different bits and pieces of scenery, different armies, all over the place, and it's that sort of mix of the things that you would just know from, I don't know, like just seeing adverts for Space Marine 2, you'd be able to go, oh, I saw that tank, that Chimera in the advert, that's cool. But then you also get the thing where if you are a seasoned player wandering around, you'll see a little Mechanicum tractor from one of the, like, was it? Oh, God. I can never remember the name of the scenery kit, but there's a little scenery kit that's got the little Mechanicum tractor, and it's got, like, I think there's, like, some barrels and some other stuff. It's, like, very specific little references that they didn't need to put in, but they did, which shows attention to detail, shows a deep level of care for the actual universe itself, and shows that they were really interested in representing it as well as they possibly could, which just all adds up to wandering around in awe going, I recognise that, I like that, that looks really cool, oh hey, look at that Baneblade over there, now if we open the door, oh there's an incredible landscape that you just wouldn't have seen in the first one, and the scale of it is spot on. The vehicles may be a little bit small, but then again, as, you know, people who mess around with the models and do stuff with the tabletop, we're kind of used to that, so it didn't really bother me all that much. There are issues, little issues, things like the main campaign, the scale is really good, the fact that you've got so many enemies is really nice, the swarm mechanics on the Tyranids, by the way, top notch, absolutely love that. The actual, like, PvE, the co-op missions, the operations, those feel quite sort of low-key, like quite scant in comparison. Like, when it comes to the campaign, you're frequently seeing whole armies of Imperial Guard fighting whole armies of Tyranids, etc., etc. You don't get that same sense of scale in the operations, which is a bit of a shame. But otherwise, they are very, very fun. I mean, they're more of the same. They're more of you killing wave after wave of enemy, which is kind of what you play the game for, right? And there are some little things like only being able to have one of each class in operations, which is a little bit annoying. But then again, I'm not sure how easy or how doable some of those operations would be if, like, everyone picked the heavy, for instance, which is basically you're given a heavy bolter or a plasma cannon, or I think you can do melter as well, and then dropped in, and you use those. You don't really have anything in the way of, like, close combat. You are real, like, you're really messed up if they get them close, which, if you had 3 of those, probably not doable, so I can kind of understand why they've done it. But if you're using quick match, the number of times you come across people refusing to change because they want to play their class and they're not interested in trying anything else can be frustrating. Of course, the way around that is get a nice little group together, play it with them, you'd be all good. The PvP is hugely lacking in options. There's absolutely no way of, like, changing the stuff for the chaos side of things, which is a real shame. Like, that just feels like a totally missed opportunity. It also is quite lacking in terms of, like, variety, both in maps and in game modes, which is kind of a shame as well. But it's fun. Like, it's fun. I think that's the main thing. I don't think it's a perfect game. I think Space Marine 2 has got definite issues. I think the amount of content is lower than perhaps you'd want it to be. I think the PvP side of things isn't quite done yet. I just don't think they maybe had enough time to finish it off. The story... If you've played Space Marine 1, obviously you will know the story for Space Marine 1. There is a particular formula that you find with a lot of Space Marine stuff, which is some sort of Xenos invasion happened. Oh look, Chaos was here the whole time. Now you got to fight both. It's very formulaic. It's very easy, dare I say. It's a good way of getting multiple enemies into one story, which is why it happens quite a lot. In that respect, Space Marine 2 definitely follows the formula. You definitely have a very distinct formula within Space Marine 2. The amount of, like, actual character development that goes on is borderline zero. Technically, you do have a bit, Like, your squad, they do grow with you. Titus doesn't really grow. Titus is just Titus. Titus is like, he's always been right, and he remains right the whole time, which isn't surprising, but it is also kind of dull. His actual squad, you do get a bit of character development out of them, but it's tiny and rushed, and it's kind of just a bit lackluster in that respect. There are definitely really fun moments in it, but it also becomes kind of messy as well. Like, I'm trying to work out what the best way of going through this is without doing like huge spoilers for like the end of the campaign and stuff. I will say that the pacing for the story is odd. It's a bit weirdly done. It's not all that polished in terms of the way it's been done, and the last half an hour or so of the story is kind of a mess. It's a chaotic, beautiful, hilarious, over the top, stupid mess, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I absolutely loved it. Like, you can go back and watch the streams that I did playing through the story, and you will see I'm having an absolute whale of a time. If anything, the game is so fun that it distracts you from how kind of naff the story can be at times, and the blatant like fan service and just shoving things in so that people can just sit there and go, look at the, I recognise that. It's very over the top, but it is also enjoyable. Like, it's dumb, but it's not so dumb that you don't want it. It's just the right flavour of dumb, which, frankly, kind of sums up a fair bit of Warhammer 40k anyway, at least for me. Is it good? Yes. Is it hugely enjoyable? Yes. Does it get a little bit repetitive? Well, yeah, but then so did the first one. Is the story leaps and bounds better than the first one? Absolutely not, no. I would say they're of the same standard, roughly. There's been no great leaps, there's been no real risks. You do get a proper boss fight. That's nice. You get a couple of proper boss fights, which I will say, very enjoyable. Someone who's been playing a lot of Remnant 2 for a while now, I actually thought that one of the major boss fights was really nicely done, because it felt like one of the less, like, absolutely frustrating Remnant 2 boss fights. If you've completed that game, you know that the end boss is an actual nightmare. I felt like there was some sort of vague comparisons between the last boss of Remnant 2 and the last one of Space Marine 2, and I will say I thought the Space Marine 2 one was done better, which is actually quite an endorsement, to be honest, because I bloody love Remnant 2. Overall, it is good. Is it worth the money? I think if you liked the first one, it is, and they're not like abandoning it. It's not like the game is never going to be updated. It's going to continue to be updated. They've got a roadmap that actually seems to show things. Maybe there's something that could be learned from that by another company, somewhat related. It's good. Is it perfect? No. Is it fully finished? In some respects, I don't think it is. Will you have a blast playing it with your friends? Absolutely. How long for? I'm afraid that's entirely down to you. That is one of those things where the story is like maybe 8 hours. I think in the thing when I got the key, because I did get the key sent to me. I should mention that. I should have mentioned that at the start, actually. I did get the key sent to me for free, but they said that the story was like 10 to 12 hours. I'm assuming they're including the operations in that, because the actual main story was where you play Titus. That is like 8 hours, if that. It's a tricky one, because it's hard not to be completely blinded by we've finally got Space Marine 2. The fact is, I spent enough time in Space Marine 1 just in the Horde mode that I know I'm going to be spending countless hours in Space Marine 2. I know I'm going to be playing the operations over and over again. I know I'm going to play through the story again with friends. That's already planned. The PvP, I don't know how much time I'll spend in that, but I think overall they did a good job. Just areas of it. Sections of it aren't as good as they could be, and for me the story just wasn't quite as complex or as different as I might have hoped that it would be. But the game itself was so enjoyable that I found myself not caring all that much about how not daring the story was. It's enjoyable. It's probably worth a look. If you're not sure, maybe check out some gameplay videos and stuff. But I think at the end of the day, if you liked the first one, you are 100% going to like this one. And it's probably worth grabbing if that is your style of game, and if you are a big enough fan of 40k that you really want that Space Marine experience again. And that'll just about do it. Yeah, that'll just about do it. Oh, cosmetics. Annoying system. Kind of annoying. Not a fan of that. But then I never have been a fan of unlockable cosmetics where you use currency of any type to get access to stuff, because I like just doing the thing where you go, I want my character to look like this, and then they look like that. But that is also potentially because I'm getting old. So take that as you will. Anyway, that was incredibly disorganised. I'm probably just going to put this up in one unedited chunk with a bit of gameplay sort of strewn in. So thanks for watching, and I hope that was in some way helpful. It probably wasn't. I'll see you for the next one.